Dr. Gracia Roldan, and she's going to talk about advancing inclusion of overseas Filipinos in Philippine political processes, overseas vote.
Once again, I'd like to express my appreciation for this opportunity to share with you highlights of an ongoing study that I'm doing on overseas Filipinos' political participation in our domestic processes, specifically through overseas voting. So it's very relevant that we talk about overseas Filipinos, no? And I think during the Duterte administration, it's one of the key areas of concern that hopefully our policymakers will be putting more attention to. So the key questions that I'm posing in this study is, how do overseas Filipinos participate in Philippine political processes, specifically through overseas voting? Central to this study is the concept of transnationalism, which according to Bash, Schiller, and Blanc, are referred to the processes by which immigrants forge and sustain multi-stranded relations that link together their societies overseas, their countries of settlement, and also their countries of origin. Okay? So, and under this concept of transnationalism is a subset of political transnationalism, which is composed of two aspects. One, electoral activities, like for example, lobbying, campaigning, or overseas voting, and the other one is non-electoral aspect, which is basically when overseas citizens would be giving material and non-material support for development projects in the country. But in this particular study, I'll be focusing on the electoral. What does overseas Filipinos mean? No? According to RA 122, it's broadly defined as all Filipinos working and living overseas, whether permanently or temporarily. So this includes migrant workers, even Filipinos that have been naturalized, no? Dual citizens, and their dependents as well. And according to the figures of the Commission on Filipinos Overseas, this is the latest that I could get so far. No? There are about 10 million overseas Filipinos living in 200 countries, no? And 48% of them are categorized as permanent migrants. No? So permanent migrants could include immigrants, no? Those with permanent residencies abroad. No? And then 41% comprise temporary migrants. No? So these are those who leave the country to work or study abroad, and then for a limited period of time, once, for example, the contracts or the studies are finished, they come back to the Philippines. And 11% are irregular migrants. When we talk about irregular migrants, those are undocumented, belong to this category. And the top 3 countries where you would find large Filipino populations are first, the US, second, Saudi Arabia in the Middle East, and third, UAE, followed by countries such as Canada, Australia, Malaysia, Qatar, UK, Italy, and Singapore. Okay, so these are where there are heavy concentrations of Filipino overseas. Now, talking about policy framework, it's basically through RA 9189, known as the Overseas Absentee Voting Act, that allowed for Filipinos residing or even those who are temporarily based overseas, it allows them now to take part in our elections. Okay? This law was passed in 2003, and then another important law is RA 9225, known as the Citizenship, Retention, and Reacquisition Act of 2003, which even allowed for naturalized Filipinos to reacquire their citizenship so they can take part in Philippine elections. Okay. And then 10 years after, RA 10590, known as the Overseas Voting Act, this time without the term absentee. So this was an amendment to RA 9189 to address certain flaws in the previous legislation, in the previous law, that prohibited Filipinos from exercising their right to vote when they are abroad. So I will discuss this further in a little while. Okay, so that's the amendment to RA 9189. Okay, so as far as the 2016 elections, there were 1.3 million overseas voters according to Comelec and DFA. 1 million, over a million are land-based voters, 49,000 plus were seafarers. Now, there have been different methods employed so that more overseas Filipinos can participate in the 2016 elections. 30 overseas posts had automated voting. So there were PCOS machines deployed in some 30 posts. 26 posts had postal voting by mail. 26 were personal voting, which means there's appearance really in either the embassy or the consulate or whatever field voting center. And then there are 3 posts that where voting was suspended because of security reasons. So these are countries where there are wars, so Baghdad, Damascus, Tripoli, the posts there, the voting was suspended. Now here is a tabulation of overseas voting registration and voter turnout by global regions from the time that overseas voting was implemented in 2004 up to the 2016 elections. So you have their specific regions: Americas, Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and seafarers belong to a different category because they're not land-based. So in this particular tabulation, one thing that we would note is that there's really an uptrend in voter registration through the years. And we would note that in terms of voter turnout, there was a high voter turnout at the start of the implementation of overseas voting in 2004. So a lot of overseas Filipinos were enthusiastic to take part in the elections. But along the way, the voter turnout declined because of constraints. I will go into this in a little while again. But when it comes to national elections, that is where you see an increased voter turnout. Now, as of late, I mean, we cannot really access yet the official voter turnout. So these figures I got from the DFA, OBS, and this is also what the Comelec has, because they're still in the process of consolidating their data. But yeah, one thing to note is that in terms of voter registration for the 2016 elections, they have even surpassed the 1 million target. So about 1.3 million overseas Filipinos registered in the 2016 elections, which is quite remarkable.